Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And right now, there's a lot happening with that Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition. As we've talked about in great length by this point, things are really, and I mean really, starting to heat up. And that continues on as Xbox has officially posted a new website that directly responds and gives even more details to fans, regulators, and well, I guess Jim Ryan as well. A lot of this does seem directed at him considering all of Sony's concerns, but we also got some updates and what to expect from the CMA as well as the FTC. These are major regulators after all, so we'll go over all of that today. Also, Sony talked more about their upcoming PC plans and how they're going about approaching staggered PlayStation PC releases. They are starting to be a little bit more open about this situation, so I want to go over that as well. Of course, though, before we get started, just a little reminder to hit those buttons below, like, subscribe, and of course hit that bell if you like gaming, and if you like gaming news, then this is the place to be, so hit those buttons below. Let's go and dive right into the video though, starting off with Need for Speed Unbound. We did talk about this last week as it leaked out a little early, including its release date, what platforms it's releasing for, and its upcoming expected trailer. And if there were any questions on whether or not that leak was legitimate, well, EA has now officially set its reveal for tomorrow on October 6th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So if you do want to check out its new trailer, go and set your alarm for that. I will leave a link to its YouTube countdown in the description below, but it does appear that this is going to be a different style of Need for Speed. You might want to go in expecting that because a Japanese retailer did accidentally list Unbound a little early, which includes pictures revealing it has a more stylized art style than maybe some of its previous releases, and it might even resemble something like anime, or at least in terms of its character design. Now, as always, I'm not going to include those pictures on my channel for copyright related reasons, but again, check the description because I will have a link for those who are interested. By this point though, I mean, the reveal is set for tomorrow, so you won't really have to wait too long either way, but let me know what you think about this new art direction for Need for Speed Unbound. I have seen some mixed reactions on this, so let me know what side of the fence you sit on. Now, we also got an update for that new PlayStation Stars loyalty program. It did release today in North and South America, so you can actually go sign up right now if you want to. This program basically rewards you for doing different PlayStation-related activities and will give you things like virtual collectibles that you can show off in a virtual showcase. I'm sure we'll learn a lot more about its rewards over the next few months, but one incentive that they're including has caught a lot of attention, and maybe not necessarily in the way that Sony intended it to. See, this first popped up over in Japan, where it appeared the highest level tier, being tier level 4, will get special customer support privileges, meaning they'll have a shorter wait time while trying to get a hold of customer support. Now, at the time, we didn't really know if this was just for Japan or not, but with it now being available in North and South America, it has been confirmed. In Tier 4, it does note that you get chat priority routing, and in order to get Tier 4, you will have to purchase 4 games and unlock 128 uncommon trophies. Now, this is a reoccurring thing as well. You do not retain these levels permanently. They did post on their website that once you attain a status level, your status is valid for the remainder of the year plus 13 months. So you will continuously have to purchase 4 games in that period of time to keep tier level 4. So there you have it. It is true after all, and not everybody is thrilled about this situation. It was poorly received over in Japan, and that's translating right on over to these other regions as well. I mean, there is an argument to be made that all customers should have good customer support, or at least equal, but unless you pay more, as you can see here, those top tier players will just be able to skip your turn in that customer support queue, which kind of lessens your overall experience. You're going to have to wait even longer. So it's just another one of those situations where it comes off as Sony trying to get that extra bit of money from its players. And this is just the latest on some of their shenanigans this generation. This has unfortunately become a bit of a trend under Jim Ryan's leadership, whether that be with something like $70 games, whether that be with something like paid upgrades, hiding the fact that Horizon Forbidden West was cheaper on the PlayStation 4. They really didn't want PlayStation 5 customers to know that, and now here you have this as well. So yeah, the quote for the players, Yeah, I'm not so sold on that anymore, but let me know what you all think about this, though. Do you think it's a big deal or not? Let me know in the comments below. Let's go and talk about that Activision Blizzard acquisition once again, though, because there's been quite a bit going on with this buyout over the last few days, and that all starts with a very public response from Microsoft and from Xbox. They did post an official website that is really geared towards giving more details and just kind of listing its benefits for regulators, fans, and again, I guess Sony as well. We'll kind of come back to that here in a moment, but the main focus is obviously for these regulators. This entire website is Microsoft just once again trying to get ahead of these regulators and painting themselves as more or less the good guy, and trying to explain why this acquisition should be approved. Now, they did this by laying out how Xbox plus Activision Blizzard will benefit 3 key categories. In their claim, they say that it'll benefit players, it'll benefit creators, and then it'll also benefit the game industry as a whole. I'll post up an infographic here, that way you can check it out for yourself, but there's a few key points that I want to kind of go over just real quick. And right away, under benefits for players, they attempt to make it clear that this acquisition will lead to more choice and not less. Now, this is something that they've reiterated in several public responses, but they did lay it out here by saying more games on more devices, including Xbox, PlayStation, phones, and online. Now, right away, the inclusion of PlayStation I thought was very interesting here, and with how much of a stink Sony's been trying to cause with these regulators, this does seem to be a direct response to that. Microsoft here, they're basically saying we intend to release these games, more specifically Call of Duty, on PlayStation, and that's been echoed time and time again. They even have a commitment page on this website where they show that they've made these public commitments various times. But they're going even beyond that, because they're also saying, hey, with this acquisition, not only do we intend on bringing these games to platforms like PlayStation, PC, and Xbox, but we intend on expanding. We're going to bring these games to even more players by giving them more options in how they purchase their games and where they can play them. They do make it very evident that they want to bring these games to Xbox Game Pass and mobile devices through the cloud, and they've even shown interest in bringing games like Call of Duty over to the Nintendo Switch, which, by the way, that's on their commitment page as well. I think this is actually a very solid point by Microsoft, and it could prove difficult for regulators to come up with reasons that this buyout could be bad for consumers, considering the reasons that they gave. As long as all this holds up true, this would be very difficult for regulators to go against. Now, I think the most interesting part about this entire statement, though, is in regards to benefits for game industry. This is something that Sony has been kind of pointing out, because check out what Microsoft had to say. So they say this will lead to more competition in mobile, where a couple of big players dominate, greater competition in traditional gaming, where Sony and Nintendo will remain the biggest, and then they also say emphasis on positive workplace culture and increased local investment from Microsoft in studios and creative ecosystems around the world. Now, of course, we know that Activision Blizzard's been having some problems within the workplace over the last couple of years, and this seems to be something that Microsoft's pointing to. They're saying that they can actually help out in that regard. As for competition, though, this is what I found to be really interesting, because this whole part is basically them showing that when it comes to gaming, Microsoft is not the biggest company, which might just be the most important question for these regulators, because Sony is painting a very different picture. Sony's claiming that they won't be able to compete with Xbox if this acquisition goes through, but as Xbox points out here, even after this buyout, they're still the smallest console manufacturer, and they're not even close to being one of the biggest in terms of mobile gaming. So in both regards, as Satya Nadella said before, let us compete. Now, they've really emphasized this point pretty much since day one, and they're really trying to hammer that home here by specifically naming both Nintendo and PlayStation. All in all, though, we'll kind of see if these points or benefits, as they claim, rings true with regulators, because we are starting to close in on some very important dates. This is the other part of the news, because it has now been revealed that the CMA, which is the UK regulator, they've now set a deadline to publish their findings, which is set for March 1st of 2023. More importantly, though, might just be the FTC, which is the United States regulator. That's the one that everybody's kind of looking towards, because they've made it a mission to be more strict on these big buyouts. So a lot of these other regulators might follow suit in whatever they decide. And according to Reuters, the FTC's decision might come late November, or at least that's what they're hearing currently. So we are closing in on what might actually be the biggest update for this entire acquisition up to this point. Of course, I will let you all know as soon as we hear about it, but with Microsoft pushing out this website and with Sony being very active in their displeasure about this buyout, we are in for a very, very interesting couple of months here. Now, my own personal guess is that it will be approved, because I just don't see how these regulators can make a case that would actually hold up in court that a buyout like this is bad for consumers or that it's anti-competitive, pretty much for all the reasons Microsoft has emphasized in their newest website. But I guess we'll see about all of that maybe as early as late November. Now, speaking of Sony, they actually gave us an update as well regarding their PlayStation PC games. I mean, I don't really think any of this is necessarily too surprising anymore. We know that they're making a big push into PC gaming, and I think most of their games will eventually head to PC, but that really is one of the major questions that still remains. Do they have an ideal time frame for these staggered PC releases? Is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be 12 months? Is it going to be a couple years? And well, Herman Holst was pretty open about this subject, and let's just go check out what he had to say. So in an interview, he said, "I think going forward, we'll see at least a year between releases on our own platform, PlayStation, and on the PC platform, possibly with the exception of live service games. Live service games are a little bit different in nature because you want to have a strong community and strong engagement. So we might, in the case of our live service games, go day and date with PC and the PlayStation platform." So there's a very clear strategy going forward. I know a lot of people were kind of predicting that it could be a year apart, but now we do have it more in writing. With this information here, though, realistically, games like God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West could actually release on PC maybe a year after their console counterpart, or at least it's not necessarily out of the realms of possibility. Now, there's still not a guarantee on any of this, and that time frame could extend beyond that. I guess it really just all kind of depends on the game, but he does make it sound like you're not going to see these games on PC until at least a year under most circumstances. And I think that that's very important for PC and console gamers to know. That way they can kind of make their own decision on if they want to wait or not going forward. As for live service games, though, this was the real interesting part, because he's saying that these games could actually be day and date going forward. Now, I think that this makes a lot of sense, because live service games completely rely on a big user base. So by putting them on PC and exposing them to even more players, that really just gives them an increased chance of success. This is without a doubt a smart thing to do, but it is one of those situations where if you asked fans 5 years ago if they ever thought PlayStation would do day and date PC games, most people would have probably laughed and said no. But here we are, and technically it is happening, or at least when it comes to live service games for this moment. And if they do continue to have success on PC as they have so far, it'll be very interesting to see how their strategy kind of evolves over the next 5 years or so. One part of this story, though, is that Sony's not only committing more to PC games. We are starting to see that they are making a big push into live service games as well, and this has had certain PlayStation fans a little concerned. Obviously, Sony's known for their single-player games, and that hardcore base, they want more games like that. And Herman Holst did try to alleviate any kind of concern that their live service games will take away from those single-player experiences that fans know and love so much. He did claim that they're still making those type of games and that these live service games are not going to take away from those experiences. So according to him, there's no reason to worry about any of that. I think it has kind of come clear by this point, though, that this is a very different PlayStation than what we've seen in the past. They are going to try to experiment with games that they've not really made before. They're experimenting with the PC market, and over the next few years, it will be very interesting to see how much success they find when it comes to these PC games and when it comes to these live service games. That's the thing, though, because especially when it comes to live service games, it's hard to find one of those breakout hits. But I think Sony knows that, and that's why they have so many in development right now. If even just one of those games stick, as we've seen with games like Fortnite and Warzone, that could bring in a ton of money on a yearly basis. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though. And of course, earlier this week, I asked you all what your favorite PlayStation generation was, and then the next day I asked you all about Xbox. So of course, today, it's Nintendo's turn. What home console is your favorite generation of Nintendo? And as you can see here, the winner was actually their newest release, being the Nintendo Switch with 32% of the votes. Then second place with 22% of the votes was the NES and the SNES. Then third place was the Nintendo 64 with 19%, 18% was the GameCube, and then last but not least, you have the Wii and the Wii U at 9%. Now, as you noticed, I did have to combine a few of these entries. I mean, YouTube only allows me to have 5 different options, but even then, the Nintendo Switch, being that single platform, still came out at the #1 spot. And I think it just kind of shows you how good the Nintendo Switch is this generation. I mean, this generation is still ongoing. Its library is not complete. There's still more to come, and it still came out at the #1 spot. So yes, the Nintendo Switch is a very impressive console, and I think ultimately it just really takes everything that Nintendo has done well up to this point, and it just wraps it into this brilliant console design. I mean, you have to consider Nintendo for years, they had their division split up between home console and then handheld console, but now Nintendo, for the first time in years and years, they can just completely and primarily focus all their efforts on a single platform, and it's paid off in dividends for them. Not only do their games fit that handheld design perfectly, but it's just got such a massive library of games, including brand new releases and ports from their older devices. They've also had some pretty good third-party support this time, and it gives you that option of playing some of these beloved third-party games like Skyrim on a handheld device. I mean, if you kind of think about it that way, the Switch does have access to a large portion of not only those third-party games and their first-party games, but also they have access to a lot of their older releases as well, and that will only grow as time goes on. I think when it comes to Nintendo, though, it's very hard to just kind of choose a favorite, because there is a lot of nostalgia when it comes to Nintendo platforms. Regardless of popularity, Nintendo has consistently, and I mean consistently, they have produced some of the most beloved games ever made, whether that be with the Nintendo 64, the GameCube, the Nintendo Wii, the Super Nintendo, or whichever platform. They have consistently made great games that sits in the hearts of a lot of gamers out there. So because of that, Comic Book Saga's comment really kind of hit home with me, where they said, my first one was NES, so many childhood memories, and now Switch, it's just awesome, so many great games, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Smash Bros. Ultimate, and so many more. But Nintendo 64, that holds a different place. Such a great library: Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Mario 64, GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Donkey Kong 64, and so many more. It's hard to decide, but I will go for Nintendo 64. And I do very much agree with this comment here. It is a very tough choice in this situation, and I'm finding myself having a difficult time as well. I have a lot of memories with the Nintendo 64. I love the GameCube as well, but again, when you look at that library for the Nintendo Switch and with its design, you can see why this platform is just so beloved and why it's so popular currently. I think at the end of the day, though, the Nintendo Switch will be viewed as one of the greatest consoles up to this point, and I think that's why we're seeing so much love for it already in the results here. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.